Hello and welcome to the ManageIQ Sprint 184 review. This was a regular 2-week sprint. As usual, I will provide the overview. Kavya will update us on the UI, Adam on the providers, and Jason on the rest. So in this sprint, we had 79 pull requests opened, 73 merged. So it's a slight downtick, but still in line with previous sprints. The spread was 20 bugs and 19 enhancements, and the rest sprinkled around. And with that, I will turn it over to Kavya.
Yep, thanks, Oleg. This sprint
Sure.
total 19 PRs got merged into UI repos, 3 bugs, 8 enhancements, and so on. Next slide, please. This is a bug. Sort is not working on columns where columns are not actual attributes or virtual attributes of database table. For example, operating systems column in VMs table, like in the screenshot. Keenan fixed this issue, and he also fixed some other columns with the same scenario. Next one. CNU charts are not working for container pods, so I fixed that bug here. Next one. Services page is showing double flash message for every action. Melody fixed that bug in this PR. Adam added native console button in infra provider dashboard in continuation to change Kuldeep did in last sprint for cloud dashboard. Yeah. Next one. Jeffrey converted various text summary pages from the HTML to React in these PRs. All of them are like very similar and belongs to control left nav submenus. I added few screenshots in next slide, but there is no difference between before and after screenshots. Next one for the screenshots. Yeah, there is not much difference between before and after here. Next one. Gilbert and I converted Angular in these files to React. Some Angular references are just present as tail code in HTML files. Those files are already deleted long back. So Gilbert removed them and there is no difference in UI. So I didn't add any screenshots here at all. I think that's all from UI. Over to Adam.
Thanks, Kavya. So this sprint for Amazon, Gilbert added support for creating cloud object store containers in the Amazon Object Storage Manager. The AutoSDE team improved the verify credentials error message so that it's more obvious what the failure was when something fails when it tries to verify credentials on an AutoSDE provider. We also removed some old console methods from AutoSDE that were a carryover from the way it was originally implemented for the Lenovo provider. But after Kuldeep made this more general, we were able to clean some of these old methods up. For Azure, we're now using the events support feature check when looking to see if an event catcher should run. Before it was using the supports insight method, which isn't as obvious what it's looking for, even if it's checking for the same thing. Next slide. A lot of movement on VPC this sprint. So Nasser added support for catalog provisioning for VPC instances. So now you can provision these from the service catalog. We also added checks for the events endpoint validation when you verify the credentials. If you also have an events authentication record, we'll check to see if that's valid by checking the resource controller. Nasser also checked the auth status for the event endpoint when looking to start the event catcher, so it won't start if there isn't a successful authentication record for the events already saved. And Gilbert also fixed a security group select bug in the provision dialogues. It was looking for integer IDs as opposed to strings, and that was causing a failure when you went to select multiple. For Power Virtual Servers this sprint, they fixed a timeout for image import, which exposed an interesting issue where provider Ansible runner workflows were using the same base class as embedded Ansible, and on podified embedded Ansible has to run on the same on the exact same pod, and so this was not queuing the state changes like we were expecting it to. Long story short, this was timing out for long image imports. And so they resolved this by adding the ability to extend the timeout to, I believe the default here is 4 hours while we work on making this a little bit more of a general fix in the future. For Power VC, Cool fixed a number of missing subclasses under the network manager and storage manager. These were defaulting to the OpenStack parent manager and were causing issues when you were selecting possibilities for the provision dialogues. Next slide. For OpenStack, Gilbert fixed a missing notification error when creating a Cloud Object Store container. The original PR that introduced this feature added the new notification name, but didn't actually add the notification to core. So Gilbert fixed that up. For Oracle Cloud, Joe removed some empty translation files that were causing some invalid results to be built when they were aggregating all the providers in core. And for VMware, we added the native console support for vSphere. Interestingly, if you have an older version of vSphere before the HTML5, we'll open the proper Flash UI. And if you have a newer version, we'll open the HTML5 console. So we automatically build the correct URL for that based on the API version. And we also fixed an issue where Vim sessions, the vSphere server will time out sessions that don't have any API calls after about 10 minutes. And so if you had a long save inventory, particularly on the first refresh, it was possible that that vSphere would time out the Vim session. So now we're spinning off a thread that after 2 minutes, it will just get the current time to keep the session alive until save inventory completes. That is it for providers. Over to Jason.
Thanks, Adam. On the platform side for enhancements, Iskander added a message timeout parameter to the queue signal for embedded Ansible. This sets it up so that specific embedded Ansible runs can override the message or pass in a value for the message timeout if it needs to be longer than the default of 10 minutes. On the bug side, Gilbert fixed 2 issues. One's a sort of enhancement. Cloud Object Store container create and the Cloud Object notification error. Those are the same issues that Adam mentioned in his slides. This is the core changes for those. Joe fixed an issue where the orchestrator would try to delete a deployment with multiple failed pods. It would, in its loop of trying to clean things up, it would delete the first deployment and then try to delete it again, causing an error, and then it wouldn't be able to move on. So Joe fixed that so it would only, it would uniquely identify those and only delete it once. Joe also added a change to our CI setup where it tries to install Bundler and the gems. It was hard-coded to GitHub Actions, which it makes it difficult to try to duplicate things on other systems. So this decouples some of the setup from GitHub Actions. And it does so by checking what's already installed and seeing if it's good enough or not, and then moving forward. Joe also fixed an issue with PO to JSON. He added basically more tests to check missing validations and ensure that the translations actually work correctly. And finally, Keenan updated the user in all regions method to work with Rails 6.1. The scopes that we were using in that model were not Rails 6.1 compliant. So he updated those to fix that. Next slide, please. On the API side, Jeffrey added 2 new API actions for Cloud Volumes. One is to create a Cloud Volume backup, and the other one is to restore a Cloud Volume backup. And the actions that you would pass are there. It's either create backup or restore backup to a Cloud Volume endpoint. Next slide, please. And finally, for the developers, we switched a number of repos over to GitHub Actions. I'm continuing to go through them basically one by one. But in this last sprint, I updated 7 new repos, as you can see there. And that's all.
Very good. Next sprint, 185 will be in 2 weeks, standard time, standard place. And with that, I want to thank everyone, the contributors, the community, and the presenters here today. Thank you, and we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.